Madam Secretary, you mentioned, the President mentioned major investments forthcoming. There's already $1 billion in the stimulus. Can we expect more investments beyond that $1 billion? And how will that be paid for? There are talks about raising airline security fees to cover some of these costs.
Oh, I think it's premature to make those statements right now. I think that's part of the ongoing review that we'll undertake in the coming days and the coming weeks.
But the major investments will be more than the $1 billion in the stimulus. There's more money that will likely be requested beyond.
Like I said, I think it's premature to put a number on it, but I will say that as part of our review, we will be making ongoing recommendations to the President about what needs to do with domestic airports. But don't lose sight of the fact he was screened at an international airport, and it's the international air environment that we also need to work on, and that's why we have undertaken this very rapid reach out around the globe to say, look, this is an international issue. This affects the traveling public of people in countries around the world, their safety. These terrorists don't discriminate when they get ready to take down a plane, and so that's a very important part of the ongoing process as well.
Robert, might we be able to ask some non-terror related questions at the end, if there's time?
If there's time, I'm sure we can get this.
Mr. Brennan, I'd like to pick up on something that General Jones said in his interview with USA Today. He referred to the Fort Hood massacre as Strike One. And I'm curious if you can explain to the American public why things that were learned after Fort Hood, Yemen, a cleric who has quite a visible role in advocating for terrorism, didn't create within the intelligence community and the larger apparatus a higher sensitivity to the kinds of things also visible in the Abdul Muttalib case, and how much does that disturb you? And secondarily, were you personally briefed, sir, by the Prince of Counterterrorism in Saudi about the possibility of explosives being hidden in garments or clothing? And did that get communicated down to the system as well?
On the issue of Mr. Awlaki, yes, we were very concerned after the Fort Hood shooting about what else he might be doing here, and that's why there was a very determined and concerted effort after that to take a look at what else he might be trying to accomplish here in the homeland. Now remember, Mr. Abdul Muttalib was a much different story in terms of a Nigerian who traveled to Yemen and then came over here. But what it clearly indicates is that there is a seriousness of purpose on the part of Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula to carry out attacks here in the United States, whether they're reaching people through the internet or whether or not, in fact, they are sending people abroad.
Are you satisfied that the intelligence community sort of rose up and responded to what it learned about Fort Hood in a way that worked or didn't work?
Absolutely. I think we've already sort of taken those corrective steps. That's one of the things I might want to just pause here and say. President Obama has directed several reviews of incidents, Fort Hood as well as this. This one has been completed, the preliminary report, within 2 weeks' time. Lightning speed in my 3 decades within the U.S. government as far as being able to bring an issue all the way through to have reports we can take corrective action as soon as possible. We've already done that with the Fort Hood report. We're all instituting those changes. We're doing that here. This is going to be the start of a process, but within 2 weeks' time, we've been able to identify, diagnose, and now take the corrective steps so that we can ensure that this is not going to... And the Saudi Prince, yes, I was. I went out to Saudi Arabia a week after that attack, was able to work with the Prince, see the place where the room where the attack took place, talked about the explosives that were used in that and the concerns about it, and we had serious concerns about it. That was an assassination attempt, and we're continuing to work with the Saudis and others about these types of techniques that are being used by Al-Qaeda. And I think, as Secretary Napolitano said, what we're trying to do is to stay a step ahead. Obviously, they are looking at all these different types of techniques so they can defeat our security perimeter. So what we need to do is continue to advance and evolve, and that's what we're doing.
Yeah, Mr. Brennan, do you have any concern that the nation's national security apparatus is being overwhelmed by the sheer volume of information it takes in? Are you confident that you can keep up with just the volume of stuff that you...
I think the national security record, particularly on the counterterrorism front, is superb. What this country has been able to do, what the counterterrorism community has been able to do, with the increasing amount of information and the collection systems that have come in. In fact, I think you see that what happened in last month in Yemen with our very good counterterrorism partner in Yemen was able to actually address the growing threat of Al-Qaeda there because of the tremendous ability for us to be able to collect information and use it swiftly. So I think the national security establishment is well served by the changes that have taken place over the last half dozen years, as well as what we're trying to do here in this administration to make sure that we're able to use the information that exists within the different data sets to address our national security priorities.
Mr. Brennan, you said that one of the most alarming things that you found was the strength of this al-Qaeda cell in Yemen. What else is it capable of, did your review find, or do you believe?
Well, as I said, they have taken a number of different paths to try to carry out an attack. That attack against Prince Mohammed bin Nayef, a suicide bomber, concealed within his clothes, an explosive device that, in fact, was very similar to the one that was used by Mr. Abdul Muttalib. They're also, though, carrying out attacks against hard structures like the embassy, our embassy in Sana'a in 2008. So there's a diversity there, but there's also several hundred al-Qaeda members within Yemen. And what we need to do is continue to work very closely with our Yemeni partners and other international partners to make sure that we're able to drive al-Qaeda down within Yemen, because they do present a serious threat there, but also abroad.
Why should this have been such a surprise, though, sir? Why should this have been such a surprise?
What I'm saying is that they were able to bring a person into that execution phase and actually put them on an airport coming here to the United States. As I said, that was one of the failures. As far as we saw that this increased activity was taking place, but we were not focused enough on making sure that we were able to identify whoever was going to be used to carry out that type of attack.
Deb?
Yes, have you learned anything that would suggest that this terrorist suspect specifically chose Detroit, perhaps to send a message to the large Arab American population there? And on that point, when the president today talked about his concern about lone recruits being attracted to al-Qaeda and their messaging, he talked about wanting to have some special efforts to break those kinds of that kind of appeal. Is there anything that you'll be doing specifically in an area like southeastern Michigan that has a very large Arab American and Muslim population?
The Department of Homeland Security has had outreach efforts into different populations, Muslim American populations, the Somali communities across the United States over the last years, trying to build bridges so that there's good communication between us, even in the face of those who would distort a religion for terrorist purposes. We need to look at strengthening those activities. We also need to look at the whole issue of what is called counter-radicalization. How do we identify someone before they become radicalized to the point where they're ready to blow themselves up with others on a plane? And how do we communicate better American values and so forth in this country, but also around the globe? How do we work with our allies, like the UK, on this? That's been a major topic of conversation between us and the UK over the prior months. So you are right to point out that there's a whole kind of related issue here, which is how do we get into the process before somebody becomes so radicalized that they're ready to commit this kind of an act.
And did you find any reason to suspect that particular flight was chosen because it was headed to Detroit, given the large Yemeni and Arab American population there?
You know, I think that's within the purview of the criminal case, so it wouldn't be appropriate for comment right now.